Who's preventing stuff from getting done? I'm Mr. Beat, and have you ever wondered why so many bills die in the United States Senate, especially in recent years?
If you're wondering about these blocked out days, that's when we are not in session.
Well, it's more than them barely showing up to work, actually. Nope, there's a bigger reason. In this video, I'm gonna explain why the US Senate rarely passes a law these days. In order to do that, we must first go back to a magical place that I call the past. Join me, let's go, come on. Here we go, back further still, keep going, keep going. All right, a little bit further. Here we go. The year was 1805, and our friend Aaron Burr, who is, in my opinion, the second worst vice president in American history, was presiding over the Senate. Burr, who had recently been indicted for murdering Alexander Hamilton, goodness gracious, called to get rid of the rule known as the previous question motion. The previous question motion just said that a simple majority of the Senate could vote to cut off debate on a bill in order to vote on it. Now, in Burr's defense, he didn't think it would be a big deal, and he thought it might make things run more smoothly in the Senate. The Senate agreed with him, and the next year they got rid of the previous question motion, and for the next 31 years there were no problems. But then a group of Whig senators who hated Andrew Jackson voted to censure him, or express formal disapproval of him. However, flash forward to January 1837, and now the Democrats had an overwhelming majority in the Senate, soon to be 2/3 as a matter of fact, and were like, we shall set the record straight, dadgummit.
Andrew Jackson is groovy.
And they decided to vote to reverse the censure. So in response, the Whig senators were like, nuh-uh, and realized they could just keep debating about it to delay the vote. Well, it didn't work. They got tired and the censure was reversed anyway. Still, this opened up a big old can of worms. 4 years later, now the Whigs had the majority in the Senate, and this time the Democrats were like, we can do that too, bruh. Extending debate to prevent a bill from being passed to charter a new national bank. That all said, over the next several decades, the Senate still passed a lot of new laws. Why? Because they still only needed a majority. The minority party could delay the vote as best as they could, but eventually they would just get tired, or the majority party would actually change their minds and decide not to vote on a bill if the minority opposition was convincing or, loud enough, I suppose. By the end of the 1800s, filibusters became more and more common. Hold up, what? I haven't even defined filibusters yet. What is wrong with me? Well, a lot of things are wrong with me. But that's okay, because no human being is perfect. Except Mrs. Beat, of course. Before I define what filibusters are, keep in mind the historical definition of filibuster is totally different. It used to be a term reserved for the Raiders. No, not the NFL team the Chiefs recently beat 48-9. The actual raiders of the Spanish colonies in the West Indies during the 1700s. Yep, filibusters were pirates, basically. Later, folks also called American adventurers who incited revolution and took over Latin American states filibusters. Like that William Walker dude, an American who was somehow able to take over Nicaragua for a year. However, it wasn't until the 1850s that journalists began calling debating in order to delay votes on a bill as, quote, filibustering. By the 1880s, filibuster was now the noun we know it as today. Any action meant to delay a legislative assembly from passing a law. Flash forward to March 1917, and the Senate was now debating whether or not the United States should supply merchant ships with weapons to defend themselves against German submarines attacking them during World World War I? Well, 12 senators who definitely didn't want the United States to get involved with the war successfully managed to kill the bill by filibustering. In response, at the urging of President Woodrow Wilson, the Senate was like, enough is freaking enough, and created a new rule that allowed debates on a bill to end in the form of a cloture, or way to quickly end debate to begin voting. However, since the Republican minority was worried that a cloture could potentially silence the minority in the Senate, they were only on board with it as long as it was a super majority cloture. In this case, 2/3 of the Senate had to agree with the cloture, so we can thank Woodrow Wilson for cloture. Or maybe he just made things worse with that supermajority requirement. Ironically, the first cloture vote happened 2 years later and worked against something that Woodrow Wilson wanted. It ended debate on whether or not the United States should accept the Treaty of Versailles, and the cloture vote led to rejecting that treaty. However, filibustering certainly didn't decline after this. Oh no. In fact, it just got worse. In the early 1930s, even though Democrats had a supermajority in the Senate, Democratic Senator Huey Long of Louisiana, the Kingfish himself, used the filibuster to promote his populist ideals. He would talk and talk and talk and talk, sometimes reciting Shakespeare and reading recipes during his filibusters. Now, jump ahead to 1946, and 5 Democratic senators filibustered for several weeks in order to block a vote on a bill to prevent discrimination in the workplace. Because I guess they liked discrimination in the workplace? I know, it's more complicated than that. Famously, on August 28, 1957, Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina set the record for the Senate's longest solo filibuster. He got up and spoke for 24 hours and 18 minutes to prevent voting on the Civil Rights Act of 1957. In order to save his voice and stamina, Thurmond spent time taking questions and allowing senators to respond to him. He only went to the bathroom once, and some say he only ended the filibuster to prevent damage to his kidneys. Oh, by the way, the Civil Rights Act of 1957 passed less than 2 hours after his filibuster ended. Sorry, Strom. Perhaps Strom was influenced, though, by the nearly 24-hour solo filibuster that took place by Senator Jefferson Smith a few years prior.
You'll see the whole parade of what man's carved out for himself after centuries of fighting.
Wait, hold up. Now that I think about it, that didn't really happen. Ah yes, that was a movie. A pretty darn good one, actually. It was called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. The legendary actor James Stewart played Senator Smith, and it was actually a much more noble filibuster compared to Thurmond's, as Smith was fighting the abuse of power and corruption, and Thurmond, no. Needless to say, after Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, these, quote, talking filibusters became more common. In 1964, Democratic senators did a talking filibuster for 75 hours to block a vote on another civil rights bill, the more famous bill that became the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then, in 1975, some more changes. The Senate revised its cloture rule to make the supermajority 3/5 instead of 2/3. However, the rule said that it wouldn't be 3/5 majority of senators present and voting, but 3/5 of the absolute number of senators, meaning now you had to have 60 out of the 100 senators there to vote to end debate. So, ever since, the Senate has both a talking filibuster and a, quote, silent filibuster. Silent filibuster meaning a senator can delay a bill even if they're not physically at the Capitol. They can just literally stay home to prevent a vote on a bill. Not only that, debate doesn't even have to begin. Now, there have been cloture vote exceptions over the years. Notably, in recent years, the Senate has used the, quote, nuclear option, which means they can threaten to end the filibuster by using nuclear weapons. Okay, that was a bad joke. I'm kidding. I'm sorry about that. Nuclear option just means a simple majority vote. But yeah, they used the nuclear option to get rid of the filibuster on executive branch nominees and judicial nominees which thank goodness for that, because without it, there'd be hardly anyone approved for appointments. Because, in case you hadn't noticed, the United States is a little bit divided right now, and this brings me to my last point. If it weren't for the fact that the United States has been so divided over the past 25 years, the filibuster wouldn't be as big of a deal. Just look at this graph. This graph shows cloture voting in the United States since it began in 1917. Notice a pattern here? Specifically, here. This graph is a quick way to see how filibustering has dramatically increased since the 1970s. In other words, the minority party in the Senate has been a lot louder and more powerful since then. Now, it's not like the Senate hasn't passed laws since the 1970s, but it's been increasingly difficult for them to pass meaningful laws ever since. The big ones, you know, the ones that truly reform society. The last big law like this to pass was probably the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, and they barely got 60 votes to avoid the filibuster for it, and that was in 2010, 12 years ago. In conclusion, the reason why it's so freaking difficult for the United States Senate to pass any new laws is mostly due to an accident. An accident because the creation of the filibuster was an accident. Even Aaron Burr likely didn't mean for it to turn out this way. Only later did the minority political party make arguments that the filibuster was a good idea in order to protect the minority. By the way, whenever you hear someone argue that the founding fathers actually wanted the Senate to have a filibuster,
they believe if you get 51% of the vote, there should be one-party rule. We will stand in their way because in America of checks and balances, is the America we love. It's the America the Founding Fathers created. It's been the America that's kept us successful for 200 years, and we're not gonna let them change it.
I doubt this person actually knows what the heck they are talking about. In fact, if you go back and read what many of the founders said and wrote, they warned that making supermajorities a thing would lead to bills never getting passed. Freaking Aaron Burr. Nah, man. The arguments for the filibuster came much later. Not that they're bad arguments. Folks who want to keep the filibuster in place often argue it promotes compromise on legislation, keeps majority power in check, provides needed delays on big changes, and, when done properly, fosters healthy debate on bills. For this reason, the filibuster will likely be around for a while in the Senate. I often wonder, though, if Aaron Burr was alive today, would he actually support the filibuster? Also, if he was alive today and he watched my worst vice president's video and saw me talking trash about him, would he challenge me to a duel? I guess we'll never know. So what do you think? Should we keep the filibuster, or should we get rid of it so that the Senate can actually pass meaningful laws again? Personally, I'm actually for keeping the talking filibuster in order to foster healthy debate in the Senate, but I think we should definitely ditch the silent filibuster. But let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.